morning, guys. I'm glad to be back on the mat with you after a little brief vacation. I was back east for a week and just had some nice time with my family. So today we're going to do a little bit of work on shoulders and upper back. But we're also going to work on some legs and some low back twisting stuff. What you'll need for today's practice is going to be a pair of tennis balls, a blanket, and 2 blocks. Or you can use books for the blocks. So let's go ahead and just come down to sit and just get settled first. Kind of check in, find out where we are. So I'm going to sit on my blanket. I always like to kind of keep my hips a little bit higher than my knees. It's just a little bit more comfortable, my low back and my hips and pelvis. So once you come to sit, just kind of take a moment to rock back and forth. Maybe pull the flesh out from underneath your pelvis so that you're well connected to that blanket or that ground beneath you. And then once you have that, just go ahead and do a little rocking forward and back of the top of the pelvis. So you're tipping the pelvis forward and then tipping it back. So rounding the back as you tip it back and tipping forward so you're arching the back. Just kind of a little bit of nice, simple movement here. Just kind of beginning to warm up the low back, starting to move the body a little bit. It's a little chilly in my house this morning, so I'm looking to build a little heat. So we will do a little bit of that. And then from here, just start to shift your shoulders left and right. You're just kind of going to stretch out the low back once again, maybe stretch into a little bit of the outer hips. So I'm pressing down into my hands and letting my chest kind of move left to right. This is a little bit of a rocking sensation, a little bit different than what we normally do. But it has the same effect. So I'm moving a little bit slower. Generally when I rock, I tend to move a little quicker. But this morning I'm feeling a little bit more tender. So we're going to go a little bit slower. And then once you've kind of rocked back and forth, if it feels good to kind of come back to center and find a nice long spine lifting through the crown of the head, you can just let the palms rest on your legs. And if it feels okay to you, you can go ahead and close your eyes. And just for a moment, we're not going to spend a lot of time here. We're just going to notice what the internal weather's like. So are you feeling churned up? Are you feeling activated, anxious, a little bit like you want to move, like you have energy that wants to express? Are you feeling a little bit more calm? Are you feeling a little bit more grounded? We're just going to check in for 3 breaths. So go ahead and just keep your breath normal and natural. And just notice if you can maybe deepen the length of the exhale. So inhale normally, and then exhale, and then inhale again. And you can just exhale and let that breath go out a little bit longer. And then inhale one last time. And exhale, longest exhale here. And if you'd like, you can blow out through pursed lips. And just notice if anything has shifted at all, even minutely, in those 3 breaths. And like I said, we're not going to be still for long. We're going to actually move and metabolize a little bit of our energy this morning. So go ahead and take your right leg out to the side. Flex the sole of your foot. Keep that left foot in towards your groin. If that blanket is up too high underneath your pelvis, you can always slide it out. And we're just going to start with that half moon rock. So a little bit of stretching into the back of the hamstring here, a little bit of dynamic movement just to wake up the lower body. And then as we just kind of start to move, what I'd like you to do is start to reach with your left hand out towards your foot and then reach with your right out towards your knee. So you're just kind of almost like you're gathering wheat here. If you were kind of reaching along the bottom of that wheat stem, you were kind of just reaching around, letting the chest kind of guide the way. And as you do this, I'm keeping my eyes up and open. So at about like the baseboards of my room, just letting everything come in, not trying to resist anything, not trying to kind of, keep any kind of containment here. Just like letting all of this stuff come in and noticing how our bodies are responding. So if you want to swing your chest just a little bit lower to the ground, just to stretch a little bit more deeply into the back of that leg, you can, and you can continue to reach if you like. Or you can take your hands back to your thighs, just kind of depending on how you're feeling. And with that reach, we're kind of reaching into the lower back with the stretch. We'll do just 3 more. So here's 1, reaching towards that right foot. And then 2, and just allowing your breath to come as it comes. And here's 3. And then just come back to center, and we're just going to switch sides. So take that left foot out long, that right foot in towards your midline. And you can either choose to turn the bottom of the foot towards the ceiling, or if it feels like that's too much on your knee, you can always prop up that right knee with a block. And then here, just take your hands to your thighs, flex through the sole of your left foot, and we're just going to let the chest go forward. And start to kind of stretch into the backs of the legs here, working into a little bit of that stretching and rocking. And then if you want to add on, you can start to incorporate the arms here. So again, keeping those eyes nice and wide. And as you swing over towards the left side, you're going to swing that arm and then sweep over towards the right. So you're just reaching towards those toes, reaching out and towards that knee. So like you're gathering energy into you. So you may feel a little bit of warmth coming into the body here, and you can always, continue to move or shift your movement to quicken or slow down your breath or your heat. But just kind of let the body rock here. And I have taken my hands back to my thighs. So I'm kind of just being organic with it. There's no, right or wrong way to do this. You can do it how you want. It's your practice. It's kind of the joy of doing this on Zoom. But just kind of allowing the rocking to happen. And I'm starting to feel my body unwind a little bit, starting to feel a little bit of that movement, just kind of metabolizing any kind of anxiety, any kind of anxiousness that I've been feeling this morning. And we'll do 3 more. So here's 1, and we're reaching over towards the left. And then here's 2, reaching towards the left. And then here's 3. And come back to center. And then go ahead and take your hands behind your hips. Plant your feet here. And we're just going to windshield wiper the knees back and forth. So again, a little bit more movement into the low back, just kind of waking up all of that lower body. And you can move quickly or slowly. I'm moving a little bit quicker, just because it feels good. And then once you've taken those windshield wipers with those legs, go ahead and draw that left foot in towards your groin. Plant that right knee up towards the ceiling and see if you can find a nice long spine. So here, take your left hand out to the side, and we're going to take that right hand up next to your ear, shining the light of your palm against your ear, and then just reach up and over towards that left side. You can bend that left elbow so that it draws towards your rib cage. And then if you like, just maybe gaze up towards the ceiling and down toward your hand. Just kind of letting the head move on its swivel, taking in that vision again, keeping those eyes nice and open, and breathing into that side stretch. And then go ahead and reach up. Interlace your fingers behind your back and drag those knuckles down towards the floor. Now I'm pressing the sole of my left foot into the ankle of my right. And I'm just going to lift those knuckles towards the back of the wall and then let my chest fall kind of in between my legs so that my head is moving towards the mat. And then I'm just going to kind of twist back and forth. So shaking the shoulders, letting the head fall. Maybe letting the crown of the head move towards the earth and stretching the back of the neck, the fronts of the shoulders. Make sure you're breathing. I have my eyes closed here. So if that feels good for you, go ahead and do that. If not, keep your eyes open. And then come back up to the center. Release that interlace of your fingers, and we're just going to switch sides. So plant the left foot, draw the right foot in towards the midline. And we're going to plant that right hand off to the right side. Then bend that left elbow, shine the palm of your hand towards that ear, and you're going to reach that left arm up over your head. Maybe bend that right elbow towards your rib cage. And then once again, just turning the head down towards the mat and up towards the sky. Just really reaching through those fingertips and letting the head turn on its swivel, letting it just move. And then from here, go ahead and reach back up, come to center. You're going to interlace your hands behind your back once again. I'm going to walk my feet slightly closer, press the ball of my right foot into the ankle of my left, and then drag my knuckles down so that my heart lifts, and then drop my chest down so that it's in between my legs. And I'm just going to wiggle my shoulders left and right. So I'm kind of twisting through the upper body, letting the head fall. Compressing the front of the body here. And then go ahead and come back up. And just for a moment, come back to a seat. Cross your legs however you'd like. Let your palms fall to your thighs. And as your head lifts towards the sky, just start to notice if there's any change, if there's any shift. And it might be really subtle. Might feel a little bit more drawn in, a little bit more of that kind of midline movement of energy instead of this outward, outward, outward. We're drawing that energy in. And then once you've noticed, go ahead and lightly open up your eyes. If you'd like, you can use your blanket under your knees. We're going to come around onto all fours. So I'm going to pad my knees today just because a little softness is never a bad thing. We all need a little bit of softness in our lives. Come onto all fours, and we're just going to start with a couple of cat-cows. So lift the tail, lift the head, draw the chest in between the shoulders, and then round through the spine. So whatever kind of organic movement you'd like to take here, feel free to take. If you want to wag the tail and stay in a nice low belly cow, if that feels good in your hips and your pelvis and your low back, do that. If it feels good to round, press the ground away. So I actually had a question from a student recently about the difference between what it means to actively press into the ground. And it's really easy to see here what that looks like. So if I'm back in center, you guys keep doing your cat-cow while I explain this. If I'm not actively pressing into the ground, you'll notice I can hang out in my joints, my head will hang. I'm just kind of relying on gravity to let me lock into my joints here. If I'm actively pressing into the ground with both my knees, my feet, and my hands, you'll see that when I press down into the ground, all of my muscles engage and I can come into a strong, stable tabletop. So I'm actively pressing down through the hands. I'm gripping the floor as if I'm trying to palm a basketball. And I'm pressing down and lifting my elbows towards my shoulders. My head's in line with my heart. And the tops of my shins are pressing into the ground. So I'm really strong and stable. So if someone came and tried to push me over, I wouldn't be as easily pushed over. So as you continue your cat-cow, think about pressing down actively into the ground, reaching the spine towards the sky, maybe kind of closing the gap between the shoulders and the hips as you're in your cat, like a Halloween cat shape, just kind of stretching into the hips. And then go ahead and come down to your elbows. And here we're going to just continue that cat-cow movement. So rounding through the spine, letting the head drop, letting the shoulders broaden across the back body, maybe wagging the tail a little bit, and then inhaling to lift the heart, draw it in between the shoulders, lift the crown of the head towards the sky. So just moving back and forth here. Kind of letting the body wave and roll through this movement. And breathing as you like, however feels good in your system. And then from here, go ahead and just wag the tail back and forth, maybe shifting the hips a little bit left to right. And we're going to come back up onto all fours. If your blocks are like mine at the top of your mat, you can just go ahead and move those off to the left and right. I'm going to come off my blanket because we are going to start to move a little bit. Like I said, today we're going to metabolize some of that pent up energy. So we are going to build a little bit here. So from hands and knees, go ahead and tuck your toes, press up and back, lift into a downward facing dog. So here, once again, that same kind of active pressing into the ground. And as you actively press into the ground, if you have something that's hanging on your mind, that's making you anxious or feeling a little bit bound up, imagine just pressing that down into the ground. So when I'm actively pressing down into my hands, I'm gripping the floor. I'm actively pressing down through my feet. My knees are lifting up towards my hips. I'm pressing the ground down and away. But at the same time, I'm allowing the mental picture of just letting any of that stress, any of that energy that I'm like, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm pressing it down into the ground and letting it just melt away into the earth. From here, go ahead and take that left foot or right foot towards the sky. You're going to step that right foot to the outside of that right hand, and then inhale and reach that right arm towards the sky. Maybe gaze up towards that thumb. And then exhale, come back to center, step back, downward facing dog. Inhale your left foot towards the sky. And then exhale, step that left foot up towards the outside of your left hand, reach that left arm towards the sky. Maybe gaze up towards that thumb. Take an inhale here. And then exhale. Hands come down, step back, downward facing dog, press the ground away. Inhale, shift forward, step that right foot forward, reach up. So we're just going to go back and forth here for a moment. Step back, downward dog. Exhale, step forward with your left foot. Inhale, twist and reach. So there's a little bit of a rocking motion here. Find your breath and just move with it. And you can move slowly. You can move quickly. You can really push into the ground. Lift your hips and press back, downward facing dog. We'll do one more on each side. So right foot comes forward. Inhale to reach the right arm up. Exhale, come down, downward facing dog. Inhale to come forward with that left foot. Reach that left arm up. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, shift your shoulders forward. Drop down to your knees. Untuck your toes and just lower down to your belly. From here, make sure that you have enough space on either side of your mat. We're going to come into a little bit of what's called a scorpion stretch. It's not actually scorpion pose. Go ahead and take your right hand off the mat. Press down into your left. And you're going to lift up your left leg and let that left toe drop down behind you, keeping your gaze towards the floor. If your foot comes to the earth, that's cool. If it doesn't, that's okay too. And as you rest here, you can let your head drop to the mat. I'm keeping my head lifted because my microphone is on that side. And if I bang into it, it'll make all kinds of noise. But you can let your head rest and just see if you can really feel the length through that left side of your body. If you'd like, you can take that left arm up over your head and reach fingertips towards the top of your mat. And then exhale, come back to your belly. And we're going to extend the left arm out towards the side of our mat. I'm going to have to kind of move over a little bit here. So take the right hand underneath the shoulder, press down into that right hand, and start to actually lift the front of the right hip. So you're actively lifting through your butt cheek, basically. And then slowly start to drop that left foot down behind you. Keeping your gaze kind of down. You can also look off to the side if you like. And here, just really let gravity take hold. If you'd like, you can let that left ear rest on the mat. And just take a few breaths. See if you can breathe down into that side body. Breathe into the front of the left shoulder. And then if you like, you can always reach that right arm up overhead towards the top of your mat. Whatever feels good in your body today. And then go ahead and roll back to your belly. Take your hands under your shoulders, tuck your toes, and then just press up to a tabletop. And sit your hips back towards your heels. Maybe widen your knees. I'm going to come down to my elbows and just start to rock. So it's a little bit of a child's pose. It's a little bit of a kind of just a ball, if you will. Just nice crouch. And just kind of wiggle. And then from here, we're going to start to add on with that twisting movement. Those twists are really good for when we're feeling very activated, when we're feeling a lot of anxiety. Our incredible nervous system, the vagus nerve, our wandering nerve that moves from our brains all the way down into our bellies, is really an interesting thing. I've been listening to a book about the whole system, and it's more like an academic paper, but one of the things that my teacher believes, and I've seen in my own practice, is that by doing twists, we can kind of calm the nervous system, because as we twist, we're sort of twisting around that wandering nerve. We're compressing it in ways that it might not normally get compressed. So it's like, oh, okay, we're feeling okay. It can go back into that rest and digest stage. So once you've taken a moment here to rock, go ahead and come forward. You're going to come onto hands and knees in a tabletop pose. And then from here, go ahead and press down, lift your hips up, come into that downward dog. And we're going to revisit just one round of those stepping lunges. So on your next inhale, go ahead and take that right foot towards the sky, and then exhale, step that right foot to the outside of your right hand. Reach that right arm up, maybe gaze up. And here, take a pause. And what I'd like you to do is start to actively press down through your feet. So like you're pressing all that energy down into the earth. You'll feel your hips slightly lift and then release. So you can keep that arm up if you'd like as you press and release and press and release and press and release. And then take that right hand down, step back, downward facing dog. Inhale to sweep that left foot up, and exhale, step that left foot to the outside of your left hand. You're going to reach that left hand high. Press actively down into your feet. You're going to feel your hips lift, and then soften. Press down and lift, and then soften. Press down and lift. Press any of that holding that tension away, and then soften. Go ahead and drop that left hand. Step back, downward facing dog. Take a deep breath here. Maybe pedal out your feet. And then from here, go ahead and come down to your knees. Sit back. Let your hips move towards your heels. And come just to a tall kneeling position, or just come to sit on your heels. What I'd like you to do is just close your eyes. Palms are resting on your thighs. And notice if anything has shifted. Notice if there's any change in sort of the internal weather, that internal landscape that you've got going on. And if you can't tell, I've built some heat myself, so I'm going to go ahead and slide my long sleeve shirt off. It was chilly, but now we're getting warm. So we're going to go through a little bit of that sequence one more time and add a little bit on. So just take a moment, reground yourself, notice what's happening in your body. And then from here, we're going to come back to all fours. From all fours, tuck your toes, lift your hips, press your pelvis up and back, and pedal out your feet. Now here, we can actually play a little bit with that active pressing into the ground. That active pressing into the ground is not only a physical cue, but it's a way to let any kind of pent-up emotion like really just press down away into the earth. The earth is there to absorb it. It can help and hold any of that tension. So as an example, if I'm not actively pressing into the ground, I'm like kind of loose and wiggly, and if somebody came up and pressed on me to try to knock me over, they could. Now, if I actively press into the ground, I'm going to press my hands. You'll see my elbows lift, my shoulders will extend, my knees will come to or towards straight. And now if someone came and tried to knock me over, it would be a lot more difficult. From here, go ahead and sweep that right leg up towards the sky. And then exhale, you're going to step that right foot in between your hands, the top of your mat. Find your blocks once again. We're going to step that back foot in slightly and step it so that your feet are on railroad tracks more than a balance beam. So we're not looking to get both our feet in the same line. We're looking to get them side by side. I'm going to keep my blocks kind of close. But from here, what I'd like to do is take my hands to my hips, press down into my feet, and see if I can slowly come up to stand so that my feet are still moving towards the front of my mat, but I'm kind of keeping balance from left to right. So that's a nice little balance challenge if you're trying to get a little bit better with your balance. From here, we're going to do a little bit of Revolved Triangle. So this is a actual traditional yoga pose, and I'm going to take my one block and actually place it on the inside of my right foot. And for the time being, I'm going to put it on its highest setting. Take your hands to your hips, press down actively into your feet. Take a deep breath. And then on your exhale, you're going to do that same hinging forward. Maybe find a spot on the floor so you can balance. And then plant that left hand down on that block. Keeping that right hand in your right hip crease. Move that hip crease back in space. You'll feel your hips kind of adjust. And then from here, if you're feeling nice and stable, you can stay here. This is as far as you want to go. This is cool. You're going to sweep that right arm up towards the sky like we did in that lunge. And just see if you can gaze towards that thumb. Take a few breaths. And you're going to bend that elbow. And if you like, just sweep it behind your low back, opening through the chest. Make sure you have a spot that you're kind of gazing at, because this can be a little bit of a wobbly position. Take a couple breaths. And then reach that arm up overhead. And exhale, you're going to come back down. Place both hands on either side of that front foot. Step back. Downward facing dog. Just pedal out those feet. Once again, actively pressing into the floor. Actively letting any kind of tension just move out and away. Press it away. We're not resisting it. We're letting it flow out of us. And then from here, take your left foot towards the sky. And exhale, and you're going to draw that left foot in between your hands at the top of your mat. Once again, if you'd like to use your blocks, you can. You're going to just step that back foot in slightly so that the distance between your front and back foot is about 3.5 to 4 feet. And then just separate your feet so that your feet are under your hips. They're on railroad tracks instead of being on a balance beam. And then take your hands to your hips. Inhale, press down, and lift, lift, lift. Lift that chest. Now, we're going to go into a Revolved Triangle on the other side. So if your blocks are close, all you have to do is just kind of reach down and take one of those blocks, place it on the inside of your left foot. Take your hands to your hips, lift your heart. And then as you exhale, keeping your chest kind of parallel with the earth, you're going to come down until you can take that right hand down to the block. If you want to lower it or if you want to get rid of the block, you can. And if you have to step your foot wider or move things around, feel free to do that. With your left hand in your left hip crease, move that hip crease back in space. So you're pressing that hip crease away from your shoulder. Then from here, go ahead and start to twist across your belly. Maybe gaze off to the left side of your mat. Reach your top arm towards the sky. Actively press down into both feet. Again, letting that energy that's pressing down to really rebound you towards the sky. And then take that left hand maybe just behind your back. Opening the chest, opening the shoulder. And if the gaze looking towards the sky doesn't feel right to you, doesn't feel good, you can always come back to neutral. You can always gaze towards the ground. Take a couple of breaths. And then slowly reach that top arm towards the sky. And exhale, and you're going to come down. Frame that front foot. Step back. Downward facing dog. Take a couple of pedaling out. Let those heels drop towards the earth. Actively press into the earth with your feet and with your hands. We're not just like soft noodles. We're actively lifting and pressing. Take a couple of breaths. And then from here, go ahead and come down onto your knees. Sit back. Just take a moment and notice what that twisting felt like. Take a couple breaths. And whoop, come to just kind of sit for a second. We're actually going to come into a 90-90 sit and do a little bit of that twisting in a slower way. So what I'd like you to do is bend your left knee, take your right knee back so that it's in line with your hip, and you're just going to take your hands down to the mat and twist through the belly. So pressing, again, if I'm not pressing actively into my hands on the mat, I'm going to twist. My body is going to twist towards the side of the mat. When I press down, I can twist my upper body towards the back of my mat. Take a few breaths. Notice the compression in the belly. Notice the compression through the midline. And then go ahead and come back through center. We're just going to switch sides. So swing that right leg around. Take that left leg back so that the left hip and knee are in line. You're going to swing that left hand down to the ground. Press actively down into the hands. So again, if I don't press actively down into my right hand, I'm going to not be able to twist. I have to press down, lift the heart, actively grip the floor. And really breathe into that belly. Really breathe into that twist. Here I'm, actually actively using my hands to twist my body. Take a few breaths. Start to notice what's happening in your system. I know I've immediately noticed sort of a calming, a lower heart rate, a lower breath rate. My mind is a little bit more focused. And then go ahead and come back to center. And we're just going to come down onto our backs and come into Shavasana. But before we kind of move into the Shavasana stage, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and come down. Take your hands behind your head. Interlace your fingers right behind your head. We're going to do a little vagal reset. So take your feet wide, knees knocked towards one another, and keep your nose pointed towards the sky. This is one of my favorite kind of body hacks, if you will. If you're anxious or if you're having trouble sleeping, this is a fantastic tool that won't actually wake up your partner if you sleep with someone. It's nice and quiet, and it's a really easy thing to do. So from here, you're just going to take your eyes over towards the left side of your mat. So really pin that gaze as far over onto the left side. And you're just going to observe what your body responds with. See what it does. You're kind of looking to see if it yawns, if there's an urge to swallow, if there's an urge to sigh. We're going to hold it for around 30 seconds. And it's okay if it doesn't come. That's totally normal and natural as well. So there's my sigh. And then go ahead and just take your eyes back towards the ceiling. And again, I'm not turning my head at all. I'm just moving my eyes in their sockets. So now we're going to take the eyes over towards the right side of the mat. And just hold a spot in your gaze. So you're not turning your nose. Your nose is not moving from that spot on the ceiling. You're just looking off to the right or left. Whichever side you did first, go ahead and do the opposite side. For me, I'm looking off to the right. And just notice for a swallow, a yawn, the urge to sigh, just whatever comes as your body starts to settle in right before Shavasana. And then once you've noticed that, go ahead and come back to center. You can close your eyes. If you like keeping your hands behind your head, keep your hands behind your head. If you like keeping your knees bent, keep your knees bent. If you want to shift into a more reclined shape, you're more than welcome. You can take your hands out from behind your head. You can take your legs out long. But here, just let your breath settle. And once again, check in. How has that internal weather shifted? If you had to kind of give a weather report of what was going on inside your body, what would that weather report say? What would it look like? And there's no judgment. There is no good or bad regarding your own internal weather. It's just kind of what it is right now. Take a few more breaths, just noticing how your breath has changed, noticing if there's been any shift. It's okay if there hasn't. Again, not a judgment, not a good, not a bad. Just a noticing and a welcoming of what's going on. And then from here, just begin to deepen your breath. Slowly begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Begin to roll your head from left to right. Maybe take a nice long good morning stretch. Reach out through your fingertips, reach out through your toe tips. And then roll over to either side, whichever side seems to be calling your attention or calling your awareness today. And take a pause. And then slowly roll your shoulders more towards the earth. And press down to sit up and find whatever shape, easy seat you'd like to take to close out our practice. And once you've found that seat, maybe close your eyes and notice what it feels like to be in this orientation to the earth, in this orientation to actively pressing into the ground, because our bodies are constantly actively pressing into the earth and moving energy through. But notice if maybe, if you're like me, your body feels a little bit calmer, a little bit more centered, a little bit more like a willow tree that could be pressed in either direction. Just moved by the wind, but not uprooted. Take your hands to heart center and let your palms rest against one another and feel your thumbs rest against your sternum. Lift your sternum up into your thumbs and bow your head towards your heart. All of the love and light in me bows to and honors all of the love and light in each one of you. Namaste.